Give a copy in a minute.
No.
Okay, now we're about. All right, we're at.
Lisa, so you know, you're actually live on YouTube right now. I'm going to make us live on MUB's website here in a second. I just wanted to get
Thank
you
you.
are live.
You take that tomorrow.
Hello. Yeah.
I had all attention writing those out too today. but I
That's
just
all right.
never got
That's
to
all
it.
right. We're all ready.
Hey, you guys are being broadcast live right now. I will hand the meeting over to you to start the meeting when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. Guess we'll wait till Emily's on. Looks like she's still muted or not really connected yet. There she goes.
I'm here. I'm just pulling up a couple things. Just one
Okay.
second, please.
Mhm.
Sitting.
Okay, I see we have Jeff on, who is in the MUB conference room. You're very tiny on my screen.
Well, hold on for a second. There we go. Beverly, Dale, Tyler, Charlie, and Ernie. Ernie's out of the picture. No offense.
Okay. Do we have Tyler? Or are we still
Yeah.
waiting for Tyler?
No, he's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. You've got Charlie, Dell, and Tyler and Beverly.
Right.
Okay. Okay, well, we have a quorum and we will go ahead and call this meeting to order. First item of business is approval of the September 28, 2020 minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you. Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay. Any opposed to approving the minutes? Great. We will have those minutes approved. The first item we have on our agenda today is a discussion with GRS and looking at actuarial assumptions, calculating joint and survivor factors. So Lance, I believe you will be presenting to us, or at least talking us through this a little bit.
Yes, thank you very much. And good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you having me on today to talk about this issue. I'm joined by one of my associates, Josh Murner, who's also an actuary with GRS, and his name on the screen as well. So just by way of background, and I'm guessing you probably all know this, but let me do some background anyway. So it's in accordance with West Virginia Code, Chapter 08, Article 22, Section 7F, which provides that a member may elect to receive a joint and survivor pension on what they call an actuarially equivalent basis. And then the West Virginia Code goes on to define actuarial equivalence as meaning an annuity of equal value when computed on the basis of actuarial tables in use by the fund. So what's currently happening right now is the actuarial factors that are currently being used when a member retires and selects a joint survivor, they're based on outdated actuarial assumptions. We have changed the actuarial assumptions that we use. We've updated the actuarial assumptions that we use for the annual actuarial valuation, but we haven't changed updated the factors that are being used when a member retires and selects a joint survivor factor. So what's happening is that there's a difference between what the actuarial valuation is predicting, and then when someone actually retires, there's a difference between that and the value of the benefit that the person is getting. So our recommendation is to update the factors that are used when a member retires and selects a joint survivor to be consistent with the same actuarial assumptions that are being used for in the annual actuarial valuation. And so we took a look at a number of different combinations of member ages and beneficiary ages. And so we actually looked at 8, and of those 8, there's only one instance where the updated factors produced a smaller benefit. So for those other 7 combinations, again, of members' age and beneficiary age, the updated factors are actually creating or calculating a larger benefit for the member. So basically what we're saying, and it's really, it's a combination of both. There's a change in the investment return assumption, and then there's a change in the mortality assumption. And that's the difference. And it's really the combination of both the mortality change and the investment return assumption change that is creating a difference between the fact that the benefit, the amount that is actually being calculated versus the amount that we would have predicted in the actuarial valuation. So that's our recommendations, to update the factors. This occurs, all the time with all of our clients. It's nothing unusual to Morgantown whatsoever, but we think it would be more consistent to use the updated factors. And given that in a majority of the cases, members who retire and we use these updated factors will actually get a slightly larger benefit. So that's our recommendation. I'm happy to answer any and all questions. And if they're hard questions, I'll ask Josh to answer them.
Thanks, Lance. Does anyone have questions for Lance? I've got a few, but I want to give others a chance to talk first.
I have a quick question. I guess people are living longer nowadays. So why would the benefit be higher instead of lower to protect the fund?
So yeah, it's really, you're right. It's not necessarily intuitive, but what's happening is that, as I said earlier, it's really a combination of both the change in the mortality, an update in the mortality table, and an update to the investment return assumption. So the investment return assumption actually, I have to look here and make sure I don't say the wrong thing. So the current assumptions that we're using for the annual actuarial evaluation include an investment return assumption of 7% and mortality according to what's termed RP 2014 Healthy Annuitant Mortality Table. The assumptions that are being used to calculate the joint and survivor factors currently include an investment return assumption of 7.5% and post-mortality according to the current table, which is entitled UP 1994 table. So we're reducing the investment return assumption from 7.5 to 7, but at the same time, we're updating the mortality from a very old table to a much more current table. And it's really what's kind of the driving force here is the update in mortality. And so, as I said earlier, it's not necessarily intuitive, but if you think about it, if we're predicting, and the newer table is predicting that people will live longer. So if a member who retires lives longer, that means there's less of a benefit for his beneficiary to get. And if there's less reliance on a beneficiary, that means there's less of a reduction. And so what's really happening is, because it's less of a reduction in the joint and survivor factor, it's a higher factor. And so members would get more than what they would have if we had been using more than what they're getting currently using the current assumptions. I know that's kind of confusing, but it's really a matter of people members, retirees living longer, and therefore there's less reliance on the beneficiary.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, I know that was a long-winded explanation, somewhat complicated, but as I said, it's really the driving force is the mortality. As people live longer, there's less of a reduction for the joint and survivor because they're living longer, and so you don't need to have that big reduction for the beneficiary.
Thanks, Lance. So this is really just looking at two independent items. One is, what's kind of our investment return, and that's actually decreasing. We're currently using 7.5%, and that's decreasing to 7%. And then looking at changing the mortality tables from a 1984 version to a, is it the 2014 or the 2015?
2014.
2014. So while that is.
And actually the 7% and the 2014 table, those are the tables and assumptions that we're using when we do the annual actuarial valuation. So those are the tables that you've adopted and we're using when we do the annual actuarial valuation.
So currently it's just not the table that we're using when we're actually calculating what somebody is going to get.
Correct. Yeah.
And what, so this board, and I think obviously this was prior to me joining this board, this was, has been in effect using that 7% in that 2014 mortality table for a while now.
Yeah, and we've actually recommended updates to the factors, but we never got to that discussion. But we've been talking about it, and I know it never got to be a priority. But we really think it's time to update those factors so they're consistent.
Are there issues with them not being consistent, or do other municipalities run into this where they're not consistent? Or do people typically update both of them at the same time?
Yeah, they typically update the assumptions used for the valuation, and then at a later date, maybe a year later, update the factors that are used for the optional payment forms. So it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly at the same time, but most municipalities will update it, following the change in assumptions for the valuation. And so we're just a little late here.
Any other questions or comments from members of the board?
I'd simply note that it sounds like it'd be wise for the board to update the numbers so that we're using consistent factors.
I definitely agree, Jeff. I mean, I think having our annual actual assumptions based on one number and then what we're actually calculating rates on based on a different number, I would also agree that I'd like to see those become more in line. Any other comments, Charlie, Tim, or Charlie, Tyler, or Dell?
Do we need a motion to accept this?
I think if this is at the point where we would be taking action on it, then yes, we would be looking for a motion to update the actuarial assumptions to reflect an investment return assumption of 7% and a post-retirement mortality according to the RP 2014 health mortality table?
To avoid repeating of that, Emily, I would so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Any opposed? All right, we will go ahead and update that. Thank you so much, Lance, for providing us with that information.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss it with you. And the only question we would have is, we'll prepare the updated factors. The only question I would have for you is, when would you like to start using them for actual retirements? And really, that's at your option. I would suggest, doing it sooner than later, but.
How does the board feel, either doing kind of the beginning of the month or beginning of the calendar year?
Lance, how do you typically see that? Is it just a beginning of a month or the beginning of the year?
Yeah, it's either beginning of a month or beginning of the year. And so it would really impact, the only difference would impact, if you have retirements between now and the end of the year, if you decide to delay it until the beginning of the year. And so you might have, again, depending on the age of the member and the age of the beneficiary, and kind of looking at our examples, we were showing most of them got a bigger benefit. So if you wanted to change the current updated factors sooner than later, you might give anybody who retires between now and the end of the year a slightly bigger benefit.
I have one more question, Lance.
Sure.
Is 2014 the most updated table?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
The 2014, is that the most updated? Is there 2018 or 2016, or is just 2014 the most updated one?
So the 2014 table was the most current table until this year. And this year, there's a new table that is specific to public sector plans. So when the actuarial industry looked at it, and they come out with tables, generally speaking, every 5 years or so. So there's a brand new table for public sector plans, and then there's a brand new table for private sector plans. The 2014 table, though, is still pretty much in use. And so more and more firms, more and more retirement systems are starting to look at changing to the latest public sector mortality table. But and we could look at that if that's something you'd want to. But the 2014 table, we're comfortable with for this at this point. It's really up to you.
Is it ever common to, I guess, update what you're calculating on a newer version than what your annual assumptions are based on, or how are?
Yeah, probably not. That's not common. It's generally common to, do the benefit factors based on the same assumptions that we're using for the annual actuarial valuation. And I can tell you that, generally speaking, this new mortality table, as is always the case, is showing, people are living a little bit longer. So that if we updated the factors to that table and updated the mortality table in use for the annual actuarial valuation, your costs would probably increase as well.
Is there an impact if folks are retiring with this changing of the table? I know most of them increase, but if you're retiring and you're older versus somebody who may be a younger retiree?
Yeah, one of the examples we did was for someone who was older, and actually the benefit went down very minimally. It was, I'm looking at so for a joint and 50% survivor, this is for a member who was age 70 with a 67-year-old beneficiary. The benefit went from, let's see here. I have to look. Oh, this was for a 100% joint survivor. If they elected a 50% joint survivor, their benefit went up. If they elected a 100% joint survivor benefit, the benefit went down slightly from $1,374 a month to $1,355 a month. So basically a reduction of $20. However, all of the other examples for members that are less than age 70 showed an increase in both the 50% and the 100% benefit. So again, it really depends on the ages. And you're right, it appears that for the older people, they're not getting as much of a benefit of the improved mortality. And so for their the factor may be the interest rate has a more dominating factor than the mortality for the older people.
Okay. What's the board's feeling on as far as when to consider putting this into place?
What's involved in it? Not much.
What's involved in it?
Yeah, I mean, to make a change. It's something simple, you could do it the 1st of November, or it's something more difficult than that.
From our perspective as actuaries, we'll just develop the new factor tables. We'll send them to you. And when you ask us to do benefit calculations for members who are actually retiring, we'll apply those new factors. So it's pretty easy, actually.
So I would say we start immediately.
If we can do it by November 1st, that makes sense.
We certainly can.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and second for updating the actuarial calculations to begin on November 1st. Do I have any members opposed? All right, great. Thank you, Lance. Thanks for bringing up those details.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present today. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Take care, you too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, the next item of business is invoices. We have an invoice for GRS for benefit calculations and research and consulting regarding QDRO calculations for $725. Do I have a motion to approve that invoice?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Right. Any discussion? Any opposed? Great. We will go ahead and approve that invoice. Thank you. Beverly, I did not see any other invoices. Was there anything else for invoices?
No, that's all.
All right, great. We have approve or confirm refund of contributions. Look here. I believe we have two refunds, or one refund?
We have 2 refunds.
2 refunds, thank you. We've got one for Leanne Badger for $4,441. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve that refund? Great. Do I have a second? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, so.
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? Any opposed? Great, thank you. We will go ahead and approve that refund for Leanne Badger. Oh, I do see this other one here. We have a refund for James Goff for $30,918.01. Do I have a motion to approve that refund?
I'll make the motion.
And I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any opposed? All right, we'll go ahead and approve that refund as well. Next, we have approve or confirm for retirement application.
We haven't received any this month.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Beverly. We have a fund member Q&A regarding the petition and on the nomination procedure. So with that, I will open up the floor. I believe this specific thing was there had been a petition received from members of MUB against the update to the nomination procedure for how members are put on the Board of Trustees for the pension fund. I know that there are a number of folks from MUB on here, as well as from the city who I know did not receive that petition. But I will, I guess, say that this is kind of a opportunity for people to ask questions or provide comment for the nomination procedure in general. Everyone, all members of the fund should have received my cover letter that had described my proposed update to that nomination process. So with that, I will request that folks limit their time to speak to 3 or 4 minutes, just being cognizant of others and the time that is on here. And I would also ask that unless the board is agreeable, that we don't directly respond to questions until after all members have had an opportunity to speak, and that's really just to make sure that we're giving everyone the opportunity to speak. Is the board agreeable to that?
Yes.
Yes.
It's fine. Emily, I just had one, maybe I misheard you, but when I looked through the petition signatures, it looks like there are a couple pages of signatories who are city employees. So I just want to point that out. Maybe you knew that and I misheard.
I did not realize that, but I can't say that I looked at every name. I had looked at kind of some of the headings and briefly looked through there, but thank you for pointing that out. So with that, if there are members on the phone that would like to speak, I would just ask that you state your name and then go ahead with your comments, and we'll try to kind of help with folks since we don't have any type of sign-up list. So don't all speak at once, but if someone's interested in speaking, go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know who you are.
Yeah, Emily, I'm Ernie Utter. I'm with the Morgan County Utility Board. I'm here with the board or the members, the trustees. You just mentioned that this is a proposal. Is that correct? Your memo is a proposal of changes?
Yeah, I think the memo was more the cover memo, and this was at the discussion of the board from last time. There was some thought that we should have an opportunity for the members of the fund to kind of review that. So that is what this part of this process is.
Okay. Also, I was notified, I'm the one that actually emailed you the petition, and apparently that there still is some part of the petition out to different departments in the city. I think mainly they came back from Public Works, but we also have the airport to come back. They're telling me that code enforcement and then the parking authority.
Okay. Ernie, did that wrap up your comments?
For now, yes.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Pardon, can you all tell me where you are on the agenda?
We are at number 7, fund member Q&A.
All right.
So this is where we're specifically talking about the change in the nomination procedure for how board members are appointed or put on the board.
Spoke about this last time. I really apologize. I didn't hear you all's comments. I hope that I can get briefed on them later by somebody else. But I really don't see why we would not just immediately choose to at least follow state code. I don't know why we would continue to violate state code, even though we've done it a certain way for so long. So I guess basically is that.
Thank you, Drew. Do we have anyone else on the phone that would like to talk about this?
Emily, this is Ernie again. I do have another question. I mean, according to the new process, I mean, what's the qualifications for a nominee? I mean, what's it going to be based on? You as a city manager will make the nominees or appoint the nominees or whatever, but how do you think you should go about that?
I mean, my personal opinion would be, as someone who is in charge of in charge of running the pension board, that would be to look at basically what I feel their qualifications would be for making sure that they are taking fiduciary responsibility for management of the pension fund. In my opinion, it's no different than how we administer our health plan or our vision or dental plan. It's one of the administrative benefits that the city manager is kind of tasked with overseeing for employees.
So you're saying that you'd almost have to hold it in an administrative position in the city of Morgantown or the Morgantown Utility Board to be able to hold a position as a trustee?
Absolutely not. I'm not sure what you mean as far as like as some type of administrative position versus.
Yeah, I mean, how are you going to interview people? I mean, how are you going to know by just having a name?
Well, I think that there would be more behind it than just the name. And I apologize, I'm breaking my own rule and responding to folks as we're talking. So please, board members, feel free to also ask me to write these down and address later once we give everyone an opportunity to speak.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, I think the consensus is we want to stay like we are. We may have one or two people that say we're breaking state code, but then again, I think there's a lot of people feel that we're meeting state code. It's the advice and the consent of the members.
It's just so cut and dry. I apologize, but it is not dense legalese. It's so straightforward.
Well, I don't think it is, because you're saying that you're going to try and use a ghost ballot, or a ballot that may be lost or misplaced, and you're going to use it as a consent. I mean, I've never heard of that.
I mean, you do it right now, right? I mean, basically anybody that doesn't respond is essentially giving consent to the process.
We're counting the majority.
Yes.
We're not counting something that's not there.
This more than counts the votes it receives.
Right? It represents the majority of the respondents. Right?
Yes, and you have to respond to vote.
And so what you're doing is you're just basically not counting anybody that doesn't respond, right? It's the same thing, right? You're just assuming that they don't want to give an opinion. Right?
We just count the ballot, they just count the ballots that come in, the way they're doing it now.
Okay.
Yes.
I do want to make sure that we provide others with an opportunity to speak. I know we have a number of other folks on the phone or on the meeting here. Is there anybody else on the phone or participating in the meeting that would like to speak?
Yes, my name is Jim Ansel. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes. I understand that you're trying to apply the state code, but I've been at the utility board for 31 years, and there are a number of things that are going on within the city and how things are being run that, I don't know if there are written agreements for things, but it has been the way that we have operated. I really don't understand if you're applying a ballot that's not returned as consent. I'm sure there are a lot of incumbents that we're voting for currently that would be very happy that if you're a registered voter and you don't submit your vote, that it is a vote for the incumbent. Probably your city council would remain in place for a number of years if that was the case. And so I totally don't agree with that, and I don't know where that's coming from, if that's part of the state code or not part of the state code. And, we already have pension boards, that the police and the fire department are separate from the utility board and the city workers. But, this was a joint venture when the utility board was created, that the Morgantown Water Commission, which I don't believe at that time it came under the auspices of the city, but we took over the sanitary board and merged. So we're a different entity, and as far as I'm concerned, we're part of the city, but we're not, as kind of the explanation that I've gotten over the years. That in the early 2000s we took over the stormwater department as well, and frankly, the sanitary board and the stormwater department were not properly functioning, and I believe we've done nothing but improve it since then. So I really don't understand quite what's going on here, and I particularly, it was brought to my attention by an anonymous source, probably at the White House or whatever, that this statute existed. But I think those agreements that have been in place, and probably now, because I was not at that level to understand, where it came about, but I think everything in that regards is being ignored. That's I guess pretty much my comments, unless anybody has a reply. And by the way, I did not get a chance to see the petition or sign it, but I'd be more than willing to sign the petition.
Great, thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else? That would like to make comments?
I guess I would like to make another comment. If I think it would be helpful if a summary of these comments and questions could be distributed widely. I also think it might, you sounded like you were planning on doing that already, but it may also help to solicit comments about what people would like to see reflected in the nomination qualification judgment process, as some of these gentlemen were referring to earlier. You have questions about it, what would be reasonable to you in terms of a set of criteria or set of judgments, if there could be some way that we could poll even just the people on this call, about that. I think that would be good to read and good to see.
Thanks, Drew. Anyone else on the call that would like to speak about this item before I open it up to the board members?
Emily, this is Beverly. The only thing that I think would make a big difference if just the one sentence came out of the process that says ballots not returned will be counted as consent. I think if that sentence comes out, then most of the members would be more agreeable to it.
Okay.
Do you all think that if you all, change the process, right, to what is suggested, that people would continue to respond to the vote, nomination, approval, etc., however you want to call it, process in the same way that they do now, right? Which is basically not really very consistently and not in wide numbers. To me, if we change this process, right, and you all are proactive with this, and you bring up your communications a little bit more modern, right, and you publicize these meetings like you have been doing, right? I really appreciate you doing that. I think that people would be more engaged and that they'd be more willing to respond, right? You could even just say, attempt to make it mandatory to respond. Do you consent or not, right? You must respond, right? We have to fill out timesheets, right? We could do something similar, right? In order to make sure that the decisions that are being made on this board that are supposed to represent the entire fund are being made by the entire fund, right? Your process now is not representative of the entire fund. And your comment about the proposal is that it is not representing the entire fund. So some way to make that more approachable, right? And if you do not want this, do you see any improvement that you could make to your current process? Right? Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. Any other members before we open it up to the board? All right, hearing none, I will open it up to board members.
I would like to say something about your comment on communication. This board just found out recently in the last meeting that city departments didn't have a clue or an idea what was going on because they weren't notified. They didn't receive memos. They didn't receive anything. And we made a big step to correct that already. They're included in all correspondence at Public Works. I mean, this board, I guess, in a sense, it's our responsibility to make sure everyone's notified and everyone knows what's going on. And the public meetings that Emily brought up is a great idea. I agree with 100%. But this board is composed of members that the actual members chose to represent them on this board.
Okay. Other comments?
Well, yeah, I'd like to speak. I mean, I got chosen a few years ago, got the majority of the votes, mostly because the distribution department wanted somebody they knew to represent them. So I think that matters that they know who they're going to have out in front of them leading them. If someone else is chosen they don't know, they're not going to understand why. They'd like to know why.
I don't see how this suggested process violates that. You know, it still requires member notice of all of the suggested nominees, right? It still provides, you know, a way for people to give feedback on that. I mean, the state code does not dictate, you know, the criteria, you know, that the city manager must use, but we as members can put significant amounts of pressure on what we want to see reflected in board membership, right? Maybe it truly is the members just want people that are very, you know, well connected and well networked within the membership, right? Maybe that's the most important thing to the membership, is that people have relationships with everybody, so they feel represented, you know, on a personal level, right? I don't think ultimately, if we really roll it out to all the members, you know, what are the criteria that you prioritize in a board member that's making decisions about your retirement, right, would be a popularity contest, as has been, you know, callously referred to, right? But it doesn't have to be, you know, as strict as everybody on the board needs to be an accountant or a financier, right? We can pressure the city manager to do things that we want as members, right? I mean, we do that all the time.
This memo sounds like.
Say
I
that
mean,
again.
the way I read it anyway.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I said, that's not the way I see this memo. It pretty much sounds like they're going to shove someone down our throat. Whoever they just decide to pick, that's who we're going to, you know, that's who we're going to have to choose.
I mean, I can't imagine that a city manager that wants to have any reasonable relationship with the people that they are managing, right, and a functioning city administration would do something that flew completely in the face of the will of those people, right?
I don't know. It happened to Huntington and Weirton. They lost their pension funds.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Yes, this is Jim Ansel again. You know, we're not managed by the city manager. I've never felt that way, and I've never had our relationship explained that way. That, you know, we're two parts that make a whole, but I think we're a separate entity that is associated with the city. I mean, we share the same pension board, but I don't know that we're necessarily. You know, I've never met the city manager. I have no clue. You know, no interaction with the city manager. So, you know, I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know what Mr. Gatlin's position is, though. I would like to know that.
Yeah, I'm the staff engineer, and I apologize. I don't mean to imply that the city manager directly manages anybody over at MUB.
Thanks. Any other comments? Jeff, any comments?
I think, I'll just add this, what we're going to talk about, a couple items down is to get independent counsel to look at the process that's been used since 1949 and figure out if it's consistent with state law and the authority that's granted to tweak the rules that are set forth in the code. So hopefully, we can get counsel on board and let that independent person answer these questions rather than, having a back and forth that may not necessarily be productive.
I want to make sure folks have an opportunity, anyone else that has comments to speak before I do.
Hey Emily, this is Ryan, and since Jeff brought it up, I'll just note I've sent a few messages to the board at your request as the presiding officer, and the requirements are pretty clear. There's a nominee by the city manager, and there's a single person upon whom all the members of the fund give their advice and consent. So a competitive election among multiple options doesn't meet that process. And the board of trustees has the corporate responsibility to administer the fund, but the establishment of any rules for the fund is committed to the city council, and those are all under 822-4. So and I'm happy to send that out as part of a notice to members as well. I don't know what they've seen or been provided, but I know that's what's been delivered to the board members.
Thanks, Ryan. I'll be relatively brief in my comments. I simply started to look into this because I received a number of complaints. I know that I am relatively new to being part of this pension board. I think, like basically anyone and everyone on this call, I want to make sure that people get a pension and retire with as much money as they are obligated to get. And, I think that that's basically in every single way we operate. We want to make sure that the fund is very financially stable, that it operates well. There's been a number of things just since I've been on the board that have been concerning to me. I expressed very clearly that I do not think that there has been mismanagement or any ill will by either current or past board members. I simply read state code, I read city code, and I read our employee pension booklet that everyone gets, and am simply trying to follow that process. Anyone who works with me knows that literally my least favorite thing is, well, we've always done it this way. Because quite frankly, I don't necessarily care how it's always been done, especially if I don't think that that's right. As much as some of the members of MUB like to think of themselves as completely separate, MUB is in fact a city utility. It is a board of the city of Morgantown. It operates no differently than, the airport or the parking authority or Bow Park. I mean, it is a board of the city. It has employees, and because of the type of board that you are, basically have the ability to make enough money to run yourself. And so, I think there's constantly the struggle between, city staff in MUB for whatever reason that I just can't wrap my head around. But I think this is a perfect example of the fact that we're in the same pension. We are, sewn from the same threads, if you would. We come from the same cloth. So I think that, for whatever reason, somehow if there's some thought that this is an adversarial move to make people's pensions either disappear or go away, I think anyone that has paid attention to all the COVID funding, I have literally been as fiscally responsible as I can be, given the circumstances. I'm sure anyone that works for me probably has heard me say no to expenditures lately, because I want to make sure that, we remain financially stable and are able to kind of weather the COVID storm. So for folks that somehow think that this is either trying to make their pension disappear, I think it's quite the opposite. I know most members of the fund don't listen to these meetings, but a board member made the comment, I don't understand this financial stuff.
I'm a popular guy though, Emily.
I'm sorry?
I said I'm a popular guy though.
You are a popular guy, and that's great. But I think this board has to remember it has the fiduciary responsibility to manage all of the city and all of MUB and all of the parking authority's pension. That is, we need to make sure that we are being responsible in how we do that. Now, that is not to say that we have not been.
It sounds to me like you're saying that we have been irresponsible and we haven't done a good job.
It's not, and I've been very clear in saying that it's not, but there are sometimes financial decisions that need to be made, looking at things with these actuarial assumptions, or once we get into the discussion of folks over 70, or when there's other things to consider, that I think it is important that whether it be through time and experience or through background, that we do understand the things that we're voting on and the things that we're approving. I've said it before, and I know we are correcting it, but, we were not following the Open Government Meetings Act. There were things like where people were voting over the phone. Those are not appropriate things. I cannot help how things occurred before me. Maybe other city managers have not been very involved, but I can't sit here and just be complacent to let things go on that I think are inappropriate. This isn't fun for me to sit through meetings or to get petitions or to have, all of these opportunities, that are kind of controversial. That's not what I enjoy doing, but I'm not going to sit here and rubber stamp everything that goes on because, I'm here in an interim position and someone else is going to be here in whenever time frame. I think it is important to take into a number of things when looking at qualifications, for who sits on the board. I think that, Ernie, that might have been your question. I think whether that be, what group of employees does that represent? What kind of background do they have? What is, why do they want to be on this board? How long are they going to be able to reasonably participate in the board? If you're signing up for a 4-year term and you're planning to retire next year, that's not really quite fair to the pension board members to kind of go in knowing that you're not going to finish your term. I think there's a lot of things that go into that. I think it's important to know that, I guess sort of similar to how we're doing it now, the nomination process is, maybe if you want to somehow say that's advice, but, we're getting that advice from people to what it is. Where I don't think we are meeting state code is that this is not a city manager appointee. I'm only, if you want to say that somehow that's the advice, I'm only picking, if you would, from the people who somebody has nominated. And then every single one of those people's name is getting put on, and it does become a popularity contest at that point. There is I've asked for the last 4 or 5 people who have been appointed to the board. None of them have gotten a majority of the members of the fund to vote them onto the board. Now, they said, well, that's a majority of the people who responded. That's great. That's not what it says in state code. My intent of keeping the item for, non-response means consent is to basically make us in line with state code. We're, and I think Drew kind of mentioned this, we're already kind of operating that way, or every single person on this board is invalid because not a single person has received a majority of the members of the fund. So whether we agree with it or not, that's basically how you're already operating. So, that's just my take on the matter. Obviously I know that many of you disagree with that, but I'm not a lawyer. I've said that before, but this is one of the legal things that I think I can read and I can very clearly understand. City manager appoints board members with the advice and consent of a majority of the members of the fund. That's not complicated. Most legalese is very complicated. In my mind, that is not complicated. And that is all I will say on the issue.
Can I ask one thing then?
Sure.
What is the difference from at a board meeting when the city manager asks for a motion to accept the ballots? What's different than that, than the city manager appointing someone when the city manager is asking for someone to make a motion to accept the ballots? What did we do wrong there?
Because it's not a city manager appointing. At that point, it was basically am I agreeing that those were basically the counts of the ballot?
Yeah, and the other thing is there's, a split ticket, as I understand the way it's been presented to employees, whereas the code provides that there's a single nominee that they all have the opportunity to advise and consent upon.
And I think it's important that if I recommend Joe Schmo on the street and everyone thinks he's a terrible person, it's going to run the pension into the ground, you can just not consent. You can say, no, I don't want this person. And if there's enough people that say, no, I don't want this person, then it basically fails and they come up with another nomination. Ultimately, I can't just pick people to be on the board. You have to basically go say, no, I don't want that person. And I know Beverly had requested, and I've gotten a number of people who have said they're interested in serving on the board. So I've gotten a number of people who have done that. I think if this board, if board members feel strongly, or if others, if there's a whole group of people you said from distribution, and they all think that you would be the best person, send me something from distribution that says, this is why I think this person would be, a good representative to be on the board. But at the end of the day, I look at all of those and say, okay, here's this pros and cons, whatever, maybe weigh whatever. And I say, I've looked at all of these. This is the person that I would like to nominate. And at the end of the day, you either say yes or you either say no. But right now, it's solely being run as a competitive and popularity contest. And I could go through the whole process and basically say, there's no control over the nomination. So anybody can nominate anybody. We can have 10 nominations, or I don't know, however many we go. My understanding, as long as everyone says, yep, I still am interested in nominating, all of those people get put on the ballot, and we take the top 2. If nobody has received a majority of the people that have responded, we're taking the top 2 and doing a runoff election. So that in and of itself is not ever becoming a city manager appointee. Because all the question that's being asked is basically, do we agree that these are the people who've been nominated? Do we agree that this is how many votes each person has gotten? That's all we've been voting on. And
I think it would be helpful if you had some kind of a bio on each one of these candidates, because I know I'll try to ask who it is, because what they do, because I'm sure you don't know what my position is at the utility board.
I don't, and I think that's incredibly important, and I think that's kind of the advice part. I mean, I obviously do not know most of the people that work at the utility board, and I think it's important that obviously that there be representatives from different groups on the board, and so I absolutely think that it's important to have some background information on folks. I unfortunately did not get the chance to talk to Beverly before she sent out that request, but I would have looked for, and likely still will, all the people who contacted me, giving me a little background on what it is that they do and, why they want to serve on the board, or, if it's just an interest. I absolutely think that's important, because it's not occurring right now.
I would like to make one random comment about that. I do not get a chance to sit down and read my email extensively every day, unfortunately. I would like to be better about that, but I receive more than 100 every day, right? This notification that came from Mr. Behoon with less than, just over 24 hours of notice for if you would like to be considered to serve, you must get an email and a response in just about 24 hours. And that is not accessible to the vast majority of fund members.
Well, that was my fault. I'm the one that submitted that. So
Okay.
I'm sorry that it was such short notice, but I do have a full-time job also.
Yeah.
This isn't just my only job. So if you're not happy with my work, I'm very happy to resign as secretary of the fund. I have no problem doing that.
Beverly, we're very happy with your work. Please do not resign.
No.
No, I understand what Drew is saying. I mean, I think it's just that my understanding, and that's as the chair of this board, that we were going to be talking about this at this meeting. And, I was off Monday and Tuesday this week for personal reasons. And I came back from work, and all of a sudden, I actually got one email from a city employee first, and it was, "Hey, I'm interested in serving." And I was like, "Where's this even coming from?" I did not realize that was going to be going out, or the deadline. So,
Well, I must have misunderstood you then, because I thought at the last meeting we wanted to have options for people if they were interested, so we can evaluate them and then open up these ballots that are here.
We did.
You talked about that. So that's why I hurried up and got the email out, at least to get some people notice to vote, to put their name in for nomination if they wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, and I apologize. I do remember talking about opening up those ballots at this meeting. I can't say my memory is perfect either. Do we have any more discussion on this item? I know, as Jeff pointed out, we have an item number 9, somewhat related to this as well, that we will get to.
Emily, this is Damien. Is this? I kind of got to this late, and is this still public comment, or is this board commenting?
This can be public comment if you so wish. We are talking about the nomination procedure for how we get people on the board.
And so I don't know. Sorry if anybody's said this already. As as a member of the board or a member of the pension fund, with the way the process goes now, I kind of hear what Emily was saying about being a popularity contest, and it does feel like that as because half the time the people on there I don't know. It seems to be real MUB heavy, and I don't know a lot of people from MUB, and so I don't know their background and what their ability is and what their how well they'll do on the board. And I feel like most of the time I'm voting for someone on there, it's people I don't know or and don't know their background, and so really I'm throwing a vote away because I really don't. It seems that. It seems pointless to vote because there's no. Everybody from MUB seems to outnumber the city people from the Morgan or city, and so again I don't know their backgrounds, and then having the city manager vet somebody seems like a better process to me. Then that person would have a background that or have the ability or knowledge that that they just work somewhere. And I think having someone a vetting process almost sounds better to me as a pension fund member than just having a popularity contest.
Thanks, Damian.
So at the last meeting, we asked how many fund members there were that participate in the fund. The city has 134 participants, and MUB has 144 participants. So there's only 10 people difference.
Thank you for looking into that, Beverly. Other questions before we move on? All right, we are moving on to number 8, which is pension fund participation, age 70 rule, and required member participation. Beverly, I know you had sent some stuff out about this. Do you want to give an introduction on this?
Well, I'd gone through, I had to look up age for another issue here at work. And as I was going through, I noticed that the person was just turned 70 this year and was still contributing to our fund. And so I attached the, let me see if I have it here in my notes. I attached the code that went with it, saying that if you were over 70, you had to basically be an essential employee, and that you were still considered by your supervisors as essential employee. So I asked the supervisor if that person was, and they talked to our general manager, and we have a letter stating that they would like to continue participation into the fund. And then when I went through that, I noticed that there was one from the city also. So I think that we would also need a letter whether he should still participate or not participate in the fund.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing that up. I know one of the folks that were brought up, they have, or I guess tentatively working on their retirement, but I think we would have to work with those specific supervisors to discuss their specific their job, if that is deemed essential or not.
So I do have a letter. I included it in your packet. So if the board wants to make a motion whether to continue Mr. Lopez to contribute to the fund.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to allow Mr. Lopez to continue participating in the fund due to his current age being over 70, but the supervisor's determination that his job requires special certification or skill?
I'll make the motion that he continue to be employed.
And I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? Any opposed? All right, thank you. And I will work with John B. Hoon and the specific supervisors here regarding the 2 individuals at the city that are over 70. Anything else on this item, Beverly?
No.
All right, number 9, retain independent legal counsel to review historic and proposed process for electing and appointing members of the Board of Trustees. This was brought up, I believe, Jeff, by you possibly?
I think it's been kind of generally brought up, but obviously there's some differences of opinion as to the working of the statute that we've been talking about as far as the nomination and election, advice and consent, the historical underpinnings of how the process has worked since the beginning of the board. I think it makes sense, rather than me sending my opinions and Ryan sending his opinions, that we come to an agreement on independent counsel to look at the statute, look at how the votes have gone, historically, and also, of course, the provision of the statute that allows the statute to be changed so long as consistent, and get an independent voice that obviously we would all live by at that point. We would be pursuing our fiduciary duties.
We're getting some weird feedback from you, Jeff. I'm not really sure what's going on. That does not appear to be any better.
There's a 304-292-3616 number that appears to be popping up every time there's feedback that occurs on Jeffson. I don't know if that person could make sure that they're muted, or somebody else could mute them manually.
Yeah, everybody that's on the phone, if you could mute, please, that'd be great.
Hey, what was that number again? I'm sorry.
3616.
Thank you.
And Jeff, you did sound better than that last time you were talking. So I don't know if you just kind of want to restate just the last part of that.
Yeah, I just think at this point that from the standpoint of the board's fiduciary duty to the members, I think it makes sense to get an independent opinion as to how the process has worked. Is it consistent with the statute? Is there some middle ground that could be undertaken? Yeah, I think it's worth getting an independent voice on the legal voice on the topic.
I would agree with that, Emily.
Thank you.
How much would that cost, and who would pay it?
It would come out of the fund.
It doesn't seem like a great way to spend
We're
funds.
within our legal rights to do that, if you must know.
Yeah,
We're
there's
like
no
about that, but
Are we looking at like $5,000 or $10,000 or?
that's hard to say, but
I know y'all make the big bucks.
that certainly sounds like a reasonable ballpark.
I mean, it's just so, I mean, I don't know. We must seem insane to you, and we're reading the same words. And
I'm interpreting them different than you are.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild.
So thinking would be somewhere in $5,000 to $10,000 that would be coming out of, the pension fund. The board does have ability to, I guess, kind of seek legal counsel. There could be debate on what's that used for, but at this point, I feel like I'm stirring up enough, so I'm gonna I'll put my thoughts on that aside. Do we have rules, or is that just the pension fund book that folks get that have been adopted by City Council? For those of you that have been on the board for a while, or if we have anyone on the phone that has been on the board. I know we're going through this with our police pension right now, where they need to make some changes to their rules and regulations on how they actually, manage that fund and, go through the application and how they get people on the board and things like that. And Ryan or possibly even Jeff, with your backgrounds, perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, but those are things that if there are rules that exist, are supposed to be any changes and stuff go through council, or if they exist, are supposed to get approved by council, right?
Yeah, Emily, for this fund, West Virginia Code 8-22-4 provides that any rules for the fund, rules and regulations for the fund, are to be adopted directly by the governing body, which is City Council. So when Jeff sent an email to you, he suggested that the board has authority to adopt rules and regulations not inconsistent with the provisions of that article, but that's not the board. It's the governing body, which means City Council, and not the Board of Trustees. So it's the state law is clear on that point, that that rules and regulations are adopted by City Council. And so as you're talking about independent legal counsel, I mean, we serve as the city attorney. It includes offering advice to the city's boards and commissions upon request, and that's what we did here. So the board does have administrative authority and has the capability to sue and be sued. That's provided in 8-22-4. So certainly it has the authority in certain situations to retain legal counsel, but it does not have a role for adopting rules and regulations for the fund.
Thanks. That's when we get into more legal terminology than I care to decipher. Do we have any other discussion regarding this? Do we want to kind of make a motion that sets some type of financial limit, or something, or do we go and get, I don't know, do we talk to folks and then come back and agree to enter into some kind of agreement with independent legal counsel? What are the thoughts of the group here?
Yeah, I would suggest that we generally have a motion to retain independent counsel to review the matter. I'm happy to, I think Ryan and I could work together and put our heads together and come up with counsel that would be agreeable and elicit a proposal from them for the board's consideration as far as, cost goes. And, it's see if that is something that the board would entertain.
I think we need to move ahead with this. This is lingering on way too long. I mean, this position needs to be filled on this board. So whatever we need to do to get independent legal counsel, if I need to make a motion that we do that, I'll make that motion.
Do we want to set any kind of financial limit to that, or?
I say let Ryan and Jeff work with a firm that's completely independent. Come up with a cost proposal. Right now, I would make the motion not to exceed $10,000.
We have a motion on the table.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've moved and seconded. Do we have any further discussion on the item? Any opposed to the board and maybe letting Jeff take the lead and then bringing back some type of proposal from someone to, and then this board will reconvene to be able to look at that process. All in favor? Okay. So next item we have is discussion on protocols for appointment of board of trustees, open nominations. I would recommend that we do not do any of these. I mean, I guess we can open the nominations, and those can kind of be considered as advice, but I don't, given what we just voted on, I would not recommend making any kind of appointments at this point. Would the board like to have those opened and then kind of summarized as general advice from who fund members may like to have nominated?
I would prefer just to wait till we got a legal opinion from an independent firm.
Don't see any reason to open them at this point.
No.
Till we're ready to figure out what process we're doing.
Okay. Any other items for business to discuss? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
One thing for the next board meeting, it looks like the third Thursday is the 19th. What are we going to do time-wise? Are we going to go back to the 1:30, or do you want to try do the 5 o'clock or something? I don't know I never really heard what the people thought of the difference in times. I heard a little bit, some people, they get off of work at 4:30.
Yeah, some comments I get, they couldn't get home and have to be at the meeting at 15:05.
So I don't know if you want to do the
we were gonna go
1:30
back
or
to
do 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would prefer meetings during the workday. It is now 10 after 6, and my youngest child goes to bed at 7 o'clock. But I believe all of our previous pension boards had been during the workday. But I will also see what the majority of the board would like to do. So I would advocate for a 1:30.
I suspect 1:30 is going to be just fine with the members once there's this particular issue that we discussed tonight is resolved. So I think 1:30 would be fine.
right, anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
I'll second it.
All right, moved and seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.